Bella was awakened by the sound of a doorbell ringing. It was early morning and she wasn't expecting anyone. As she got out of bed and opened the door, she didn't immediately recognize her childhood friend. She looked up and down at a tall young woman wearing a somewhat short skirt for casual attire. Bella tried to figure out why the face seemed so familiar. She couldn't quite identify who she was. The face felt familiar, yet it had changed significantly. The woman was cradling something in her arms. "Are you gonna let me in or what?" The friend giggled, looking tired. "Oh, of course, sorry. Come in." Sonia walked inside, her high heels clicking on the floor. She placed her bundle on the sofa. "My arms are killing me." The bundle suddenly started moving and a cry emanated from it. Bella stood up and approached. "Is that a baby?" Sonia lit up a cigarette and said, "A work of art named Leah." Bella immediately began waving the smoke away with her hands. "Are you out of your mind? Go smoke on the porch now. There's a baby here, for heaven's sake." Sonia smiled and said, "Nothing's changed at all. You're still as righteous and boring as ever." Sonia went to the porch and smoked, watching through the window as Bella carefully unwrapped the baby and let her get some fresh air. As she spoke affectionately to the baby, Leah cooed and calmed down. When Sonia returned from outside after smoking 3 cigarettes in a row, she didn't smell pleasant. Bella stood up, opened the window, and looked at her disapprovingly. "How are you feeding her?" Sonia dismissed it with a wave of her hand, as if it wasn't important. "There's a bottle in the bag." Bella quickly prepared some porridge and changed Leah's clothes, which she found in the bag. "It's chilly outside. You need to keep her warm and fed." "Don't worry. She's a strong girl." Bella realized that Sonia hadn't just dropped by for a few minutes. Since it was still dark outside, she prepared a bed for the little one. The baby was already drifting off to sleep, even though she hadn't eaten much. When Leah fell asleep, Bella put the bottle away and gestured for Sonia to join her in the kitchen. "Well, you must be hungry too, friend. Let me make you some coffee and a sandwich. I want to know how exactly you ended up here." They sat in the kitchen, and Sonia began to talk. "You know, I trusted him. I confided in him completely. And he was... married? No, it's not that. He was different at first, but he changed. After I gave birth, he said that I'm supposed to stay at home with the baby and take care of her. I mean, that's basically the end of it for me. I need a life. Why would I want to sit at home and do nothing? To be completely honest, he just wasn't the right guy for me, and I just left. It turned out becoming a mother wasn't as easy as I'd expected. But you know me, I can handle anything." "Of course I do. So what's next now? As far as I remember, you sold your parents' house." "Well, I'm in no rush, so I'll take my time and think about it. Can I stay with you for a couple of days?" "Of course, you can stay as long as you want." "And you still haven't had a boyfriend, huh?" Sonia suddenly asked. Bella smiled. "Yeah, I guess I'm not destined or something." "So, what do you do for a living?" Sonia continued questioning. "I do accounting for a few companies." Sonia looked around and asked further, "Do you work from home? As they say these days, remotely?" Bella laughed. "That's exactly the term. I mean, I can work anytime, anywhere, so that's a good plus." "Good job, but I don't get why you're still single though. I can't believe guys are missing out on such a trustworthy person like you." "I've tried with some guys. I didn't like it." "Well, I think you should try harder," Sonia smiled. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. Bella was busy tending to Leah, and she did it with great pleasure. Meanwhile, Sonia went through ads in the newspapers and made some calls. On the 3rd day, Sonia sat next to Bella, who was taking care of the little baby. "I see you're enjoying your time with Leah." "Of course. Look at her. She's such a cutie. How can you not enjoy taking care of this bundle of happiness?" "Bella, listen. I've got nobody else to turn to about this. You know, I don't really have any relatives, except for my aunt who hates my guts." Bella looked at her as if sensing she couldn't bring herself to ask for something. "What is it, Sonia? I'll do what I can. I got a really important job offer. It's a nice company and I want to take the job. So, what's the problem? Take it. The thing is, it's in the city. I can't imagine myself in the city with a baby. I can't work like that. I just need 1 month to get settled, find a place to live, and a nanny who can take care of Leah. Do you think I can leave Leah with you for a month? I mean, you work from home, and can you please help me out? This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me. Bella was absolutely confused, struggling to find the right words to say. Sonia, I just don't see how that would be possible. She's your daughter. And that's exactly who I'm taking care of, Sonia interrupted, and asking you to help me take care of Leah. I hope you understand that it's impossible for me to run around in the city with a baby. I can't afford a nanny at this point either. And you're just naturally so good with her. As soon as I get settled, I'll come back and take her. I'll be calling you guys every day, don't worry. By this time, Bella had spent a few hours around Leah. She had already grown attached to the baby, and a strong bond had formed between them. Bella felt as though she was meant to be part of this child's life, and now she was being offered the opportunity to play a significant role in it. At first, Bella hadn't even noticed the subtle ways in which she was being persuaded to take care of Leah. The discussions about her mother's unpredictable future, the emphasis on Leah's well-being, and the hints that Bella's presence could provide stability for the child all played a part in slowly convincing her. Perhaps deep down, Bella knew that she was the best option for Leah. Her own instincts had been stirred by the baby's presence, and she felt an innate desire to protect and nurture her. As the idea settled into her mind, Bella couldn't shake the feeling that this was the right decision for both of them. When the time came to officially agree, Bella didn't hesitate. The love and affection she felt for Leah overflowed as she held the baby in her arms. She promised to do everything in her power to ensure that Leah would be in a safe and loving environment. Bella knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but she was committed to giving Leah her best. With each day, her love for the child only grew stronger, and she found herself constantly learning and adapting to the needs of her new role as a caregiver. Only a week after embracing the role of Leah's caregiver, Bella found that the sensation of motherhood had a profoundly positive impact on her well-being. It filled her with a happiness that she had never experienced before, and she was astonished by how this newfound joy had remained hidden within her for so long. Every time Bella approached Leah, the baby would greet her with a warm, bright smile, even while drifting in and out of sleep. Leah's cheerful disposition seemed to radiate throughout the room, and Bella couldn't help but feel a deep sense of connection with the child. Leah was an incredibly serene baby, which made it easy for Bella to balance her new responsibilities with her work. As the days went by, their bond grew stronger, and Bella found herself cherishing every moment spent with the little girl. However, as Bella's attachment to Leah deepened, she couldn't ignore the unsettling knowledge that she would eventually have to return the baby to her mother. This thought loomed over her like a dark cloud, casting a shadow on the otherwise blissful experience of caring for Leah. Despite this nagging feeling, Bella resolved to make the most of their time together. She focused on creating a nurturing environment for Leah, offering her unwavering love and support. Bella knew that eventually, the day would come when they would have to part ways. But until that moment arrived, she would continue to pour her heart and soul into raising Leah, ensuring that the baby would always know the warmth of her love. Sonia called exactly 1 month after leaving Leah with Bella. Bella, that job didn't work out. They weren't what I expected them to be. I've already found a different job and got paid. I'm gonna send you some money. So, how are you both doing? Everything's alright. Leah's trying to sit up, and we've already tried puree. I'll call you back, Bella. Sonia hung up the phone abruptly, not even sounding interested in hearing what else Leah had learned. Bella's phone buzzed, displaying an incoming money transfer, a decent amount too. We're gonna get a stroller. Do you want to get a stroller, baby? Yeah? You want to ride in a stroller? Bella decided to spend the money Sonia had transferred on a stroller. It was a timely purchase that greatly improved their lives. They often went for walks in the park, especially in good weather. After 2 more months had passed, Sonia called Bella again, sending her additional money to help care for Leah. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Bella noticed a change in their communication. Sonia's calls became less frequent, replaced by simple money transfers and brief messages updating Bella about her various struggles, finding a new job, meeting someone who was unaware of Leah's existence, and offering other explanations for her continued absence. In truth, Bella didn't mind the lack of communication from Sonia. She was even somewhat relieved that Leah's mother wouldn't be returning anytime soon. Bella was afraid that if Sonia came back to reclaim Leah, she would lose not only the happiness she had found in caring for the baby, but also the heartwarming moments spent holding Leah close, humming lullabies, and feeling their unique bond grow stronger. As time went on, however, even the money transfers ceased. Sonia seemed to have vanished entirely. No more calls or messages provided any insight into her whereabouts or her intentions for Leah. Bella couldn't help but feel a mixture of concern for Sonia and an underlying sense of relief, as this development seemed to solidify her role in Leah's life. One day, Bella took Leah to the doctor. "Well, what can I say? I don't see anything critical. As for her getting sick easily, it's the immune system. Take her to the sea. Even once a year is enough to help her stay healthy." Bella said goodbye to the doctor and took Leah by the hand as they walked home. Lately, Leah had been catching colds often. Even an open window for fresh air could make her nose run. Bella thought about what the doctor had said. Take her to the sea. She realized she would need papers to fly in an airplane because she wasn't the mother. That's when Bella stopped in her tracks. "Mommy, what's wrong?" "Leah, sweetie, do you want to see the ocean?" "Yes." "What is the ocean?" Bella laughed. "You'll see what it is when we get there." "Where is it, Mommy?" "It's very far away, baby girl. Do you want to go on a road trip?" "Yes, Mommy, yes." As they walked, Bella smiled. They couldn't fly to Spain, but they could plan a trip within the country. A week later, Bella and Leah were on their way to California to see the ocean. Leah looked out the window, exclaiming, "Mommy, the trees are running past us." Bella laughed, replying, "That's us driving fast, baby." Leah kept asking questions, seemingly unconcerned with the answers. The West Coast greeted them with breathtaking beauty. Leah was awestruck by the vast ocean horizon. She gazed at it for a few minutes before taking a deep breath. "Mommy, it's beautiful." It wasn't just beautiful, it was enchanting. The stunning sunset, the water's shimmering surface, and the serene yet majestic ocean created an unforgettable scene. It seemed as if time had stopped, allowing people a moment to pause and look around. "Yeah, it is beautiful indeed," Bella agreed. A man nearby, watching the water with a faint smile, caught her attention. When Leah noticed a girl her age next to the man, she ran up to her, and they raced towards the water's edge. The man approached Bella, introducing himself. "Hi, I'm Rob. We just got here too, and can't tear ourselves away from the scenery to go back to the hotel." Bella laughed, wondering how the man figured out they had arrived recently too. "How did you know we just got here?" "Well, this sunset strikes everyone the hardest the first time they see it. The emotions from the experience are never the same after that, because once you've seen it, you've seen it. But the first time, whew, it blows minds." Bella stood there speechless as the girls raced back towards them. In their haste, they nearly knocked both Bella and the man off their feet. Bella's instincts kicked in as she reached out to catch Leah, while the man did the same for his daughter. As the dust settled, they found themselves frozen in place, staring at one another in disbelief. Bella's expression grew serious as she studied the young girl in the man's arms and then looked back at Leah. The man appeared to be equally taken aback by the situation. The two girls were the spitting image of one another, the only distinction between them being the outfits they wore. The uncanny resemblance between the children raised a flurry of questions in Bella's mind. Were the girls related? Could they be twins separated under mysterious circumstances? The situation seemed too extraordinary to be a mere coincidence. As Bella and the man exchanged puzzled glances, they knew they needed to unravel the mystery behind the striking similarity. "Daddy, I'm hungry," the man's daughter chimed in. "Mommy, I'm hungry too," Leah echoed. Bella's voice was shaky as she responded, "Yes, honey, let's go get something to eat." They all began to move, preparing to head back to the hotel. Before they parted ways, the man stopped Bella and inquired about their room number. "I'm in room 410. I think we need to talk. Can I wait for you on the patio?" he asked. Bella nodded in agreement, her mind racing with uncertainty about what was to come. She hurried back to the hotel, her thoughts consumed by the inexplicable situation. Sonia had never mentioned another child, and the idea that there could be another girl who looked just like Leah seemed utterly perplexing. Once inside the hotel, Bella took a deep breath to calm her nerves. She got some food for Leah and put her to bed, watching as the little girl drifted off to sleep almost immediately. With Leah tucked in for the night, Bella knew it was time to confront the mystery head-on. She gathered her thoughts and made her way to the patio. Rob was already waiting, smoking a cigarette and gazing at the horizon. When Bella approached, he quickly extinguished the cigarette and threw the butt in the trash can. "Sorry, I had quit smoking, but I couldn't contain myself today." He took a moment before speaking again. "So, I'm guessing we both know Sonia, huh?" When Bella heard the name Sonia, all her hopes that this was just a simple coincidence crumbled at that moment. "Yes, she's my friend. It's been 5 years since I last heard from her. She left Leah for months and never returned." "Yeah, she'd always dreamed of a big city life. I was madly in love with her. I really hoped we could build a family, but Sonia, she's just... I don't know how to explain it. There was so much mystery in her that made her extremely attractive to men, but she chose a different life. She chose to stay mysterious. Sonia left me when I suspected she was pregnant. I searched for her for 2 years but found Christine instead. It wasn't hard to convince the orphanage. The DNA test did its job. I still wish to find Sonia, but this time to tell her how much I've come to hate her." "Are you saying that she only took one of the babies?" Bella asked. "She did, and now I know why. Christine was born with a heart disease. Sonia didn't want to deal with a sick baby." Bella's eyes filled with concern, but Rob quickly reassured her that things were fine now. "Christine has had a few surgeries and she can't fly for now, and that's actually why we're here. Other than that, she's absolutely healthy." Bella and Rob stayed up late talking, not noticing as the sky began to lighten. Before saying goodbye, Rob took Bella's hand and said, "I can see how worried you are. Trust me, I'm not a monster, and I won't take Leah away from you. I can see how attached you two are and how much she loves you. Let's just relax these 2 weeks and enjoy our stay. Something will become clear, and if not, we can always sit and talk in the end. All I ask is that you don't avoid us, please." Bella smiled through her tears. "Thank you. To be honest, I was thinking about running away, even though it's not a good idea." Bella had initially entertained thoughts of leaving and putting the strange encounter with the man behind her, fearing that he might try to take Leah away. However, after their conversation on the patio, she felt somewhat reassured. It appeared that Rob was just as bewildered by the situation as she was, and his genuine concern for the welfare of both girls was evident. That being said, Bella couldn't bring herself to trust Rob entirely. The questions surrounding the girls' resemblance were still unanswered, and the stakes were too high for her to let her guard down completely. Despite his seemingly good intentions, Bella knew that she needed to remain cautious in her dealings with Rob. Her priority was to protect Leah and ensure her well-being. As Bella navigated this unexpected turn of events, she found herself wrestling with a mix of emotions. While she was relieved to have someone else who understood the gravity of the situation, she couldn't help but feel anxious about the uncertainty that lay ahead. The search for answers would undoubtedly be a complicated process, and Bella knew she had to prepare herself for the challenges and revelations that would come with it. She vowed to stay vigilant and focused, determined to safeguard Lisa's happiness and security no matter what the truth might bring. Surprisingly, the girls spent most of their time together, building sandcastles, swimming, and soon even having breakfast together. Bella watched with amazement at how similar they were, even in their gestures and mannerisms. As a result, Bella and Rob spent a lot of time together too. They talked about everything, and at times Bella couldn't fathom how Sonia could leave such a good man behind. Rob was the perfect man, dedicated to family and willing to go to great lengths to provide for it. But most importantly, Rob seemed genuine. Despite his rugged and imposing appearance, he seemed kind-hearted, especially when they rescued the sea turtle together. They all celebrated the rescue, and after an exhausting day and a delicious dinner, the girls fell asleep in Bella's room. Robert and Bella sat on the patio, deep in conversation. He was a true gentleman, courteous and attentive. It had been a long time since Bella had felt so cared for and valued. They stayed up late again, and Bella only returned to her room in the morning. The girls were sound asleep, and Bella lay down next to them. She found it difficult to fall asleep, consumed by worry and fear. What have I done? Bella kept asking herself, berating herself for her actions. The thoughts of everything Robert had told her about Leah and Sonia kept replaying in her mind. She was worried about the fact that she never went looking for Sonia. In fact, she secretly wished she would never return. She kept trying to convince herself that what she had done was okay. Amidst all the negative thoughts, the image of Robert saying kind words to Bella and smiling was one thing that brought a smile to her face. In the morning, she was awakened abruptly. Robert and the girls were standing there. "Bella, I think we need to talk," Robert said. "What? What's going on?" Bella asked, bewildered and still groggy from sleep. As she considered what could be happening, her heart raced with fear. She dreaded the worst, that he would announce he was taking Leah. Bella's mouth hung open, waiting for Robert to say the words. At that moment, the girls started jumping up and down on the bed. "Yes, yes, yes," they shouted excitedly. In 3 days, Bella, Leah, Robert, and Christine set off on a new journey together. Their first stop was Rob's place, where they would spend some time getting to know each other better and adjusting to their life as a family. During their stay, the girls grew even closer, their bond strengthening day by day. It was a heartwarming sight to see the sisters playing, laughing, and discovering their shared interests. Once they were settled in at Rob's place, they began making plans to visit Bella's town. Rob wanted to ensure that everything was in order regarding Leah's paperwork and legal matters. As they handled the paperwork and met with lawyers, Bella felt a mixture of relief and gratitude. Robert's support and understanding had made this process much easier than she had anticipated. She realized Rob's intentions were pure, and she somewhat felt guilty for feeling cautious about him. Bella knew that the decision to keep Leah close to her sister was the right one. She could see the happiness that their connection brought to both girls, and it filled her heart with joy. In the end, the family decided to split their time between Bella's town and Rob's place, allowing the girls to maintain their relationships with both communities. Through it all, Bella and Robert continued to grow closer, their shared love for the girls and their commitment to providing a loving, stable home for them, forging a strong bond between them. As the days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, it became clear that this new family was meant to be. Together, they faced the challenges and joys of life, united by their love and dedication to the happiness of Leah and Christine. "Wow, Dawn! Bravo! I haven't heard anything quite like it in ages. Where do you discover such incredible talents? What are your plans for her, by the way?" Don found himself at home that day, diligently working on financial reports, when the unexpected phone call interrupted his focus. Don was momentarily puzzled by the phone call from his friend James, as his mind had been deeply immersed in analyzing various figures on the documents before him. Struggling to shift his focus, he continued to glance at the numbers while trying to make sense of his friend's words. Eventually, he managed to tear his gaze away from the papers and fully concentrate on the conversation with James. "Let me tell you, Don, she's absolutely amazing. Fantastic work." "What are you talking about, James? I've been stuck at home for the past 20 days, I think. I haven't found anyone to perform at the restaurant, and I'm not sure what you're referring to." Don's nervousness grew as he needed to focus on his reports, but his curiosity was piqued as well. "I don't know if you're still the owner of the tomb, but let me tell you this. That girl's voice is like a unicorn emerging from the mist on the other side of Adams Creek. I'd like a table reserved by default every time she performs. I've never heard anyone sing with such a sweet and melodious voice. And the songs themselves, They're entirely new to me as well. I'm thinking she or her family must be the creators. I mean, the songs are truly original. Whatever you did, I thoroughly enjoyed it. If not for work, I'd practically move into your restaurant." James wrapped up the conversation and hung up the phone. Don stared at his phone for a moment, processing what he had just heard. James Mendez was not only the deputy mayor, but also an old friend of Don's. It wasn't the call itself that surprised Don, but rather the content of what James had shared with him. The last performers Don recalled booking were a folk rock band, scheduled to perform for 3 weeks, including that very night. Now he found himself utterly confused and unable to make sense of the situation. To unravel the mystery, or at least attempt to grasp what exactly James had been raving about, Don decided he needed to either call the manager or visit the restaurant personally. Naturally, his curiosity got the better of him, and he opted to drive to the Tune himself. Mr. Don Brooks was far from being just an ordinary restaurateur. He was an individual who was genuinely passionate about his profession and constantly sought innovative ways to make his establishment truly remarkable. His dedication and enthusiasm not only fueled his creativity, but they also played a significant role in the numerous successes he achieved in setting his restaurant apart from the rest. Don Brooks' restaurant quickly gained a reputation as one of the finest dining establishments in town. As a result, eager patrons often found themselves booking reservations weeks in advance, eager to secure a table at this much-coveted culinary hotspot. The exceptional dining experience provided by the restaurant consistently drew in both locals and visitors alike, cementing its status as a premier destination for food enthusiasts. The remarkable aspect of Mr. Brooks' approach to his restaurant was that he not only aimed to serve guests delectable meals, but also sought to delight and surprise them at every turn. He believed that an unforgettable dining experience was not just about tantalizing taste buds, but also about creating a unique atmosphere and presenting unexpected elements that would leave a lasting impression on his patrons. This commitment to innovation and excellence helped set Mr. Brooks' restaurant apart from others, making it truly extraordinary. Mr. Brooks frequently incorporated performance art into the dining experience at his restaurant, adding an element of excitement and anticipation for his patrons. He had a knack for discovering and showcasing a diverse array of incredibly talented performers, leaving guests eagerly wondering what sort of entertainment they might encounter during their next visit. At times, people affectionately referred to Mr. Brooks' restaurant as a philharmonic or theater, reflecting the seamless blend of culinary and artistic experiences that he had masterfully created. This combination not only elevated the restaurant's reputation, but also contributed to its bustling atmosphere. The Tune, as Mr. Brooks' restaurant was called, had earned a solid reputation among the high society clientele who frequented it. Don's unfulfilled aspirations of becoming an actor or singer may have played a part in his decision to dedicate a significant portion of the restaurant's space to a stage. This unique feature allowed him to blend his love for the performing arts with his passion for creating exceptional dining experiences. By doing so, Don was able to fulfill his artistic desires while simultaneously providing a one-of-a-kind culinary and entertainment experience that attracted the attention and admiration of the city's elite. The Tune reserved its larger events featuring more elaborate performances for weekends and holidays. "Tammy, that girl is out there again." "Yeah, I saw her. We should at least get her some food." "Tammy, she's singing again. Did you see the crowd last time?" "What do you want me to do?" "Nothing really, just thought I'd let you know to watch the clouds." "It's gonna pour soon. Look how she's dressed." "Stop beating about the bush, Kevin. Tell me what to do." The manager of the Tune and his assistant stood on the porch, observing a 12-year-old girl singing at the intersection of two busy streets. This wasn't their first time noticing the girl. She had been there on several occasions, standing and singing just as she was doing now. However, they couldn't actually hear her voice due to the distance and the constant hum of passing cars. Half an hour later, the noise outside had subsided, and both Tammy and Kevin could finally hear the girl's enchanting singing. "So, what do we do?" Kevin asked as a few heavy raindrops splattered on the ground. What do you mean, what do we do? Go get her, man, Tammy urged. I hope Mr. Brooks won't get mad at us, Kevin expressed before dashing out into the street. He won't be mad at all. He won't find better managers than us, Tammy said with a smile. Kevin had only recently started working at the restaurant, but he was already brimming with creative ideas. As an easygoing guy, he quickly built a strong rapport with his staff. 5 minutes later, after the rain had ceased, Kevin returned with the girl in tow. Tammy's eyes widened in shock as she saw how drenched the young singer was. You're all wet. Hold on, we'll get you something to change into. Kevin, go fetch something hot from the kitchen for the kid. Tammy found her old uniform. The girl was quite tall, but she was too skinny. Let's tie it up here, pull it up a little bit here. Look at you now, pretty. The girl smiled hesitantly. Tammy seated her at a table. Help yourself. So, I can't promise you anything yet, but you can try singing here. Whatever you get tipped is yours. Deal? The girl nodded and asked, Are the owners okay with that? You're good. Mr. Brooks is a cool guy, and if something happens, Kevin and I will be responsible. So don't worry, okay? What's your name, by the way? Dorothy. What a wonderful name. Are you from around here? Because I've never heard anything like your singing before. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Dorothy looked up and quickly spoke up. No, it's all right. I can tell you my story. So, my mom and I moved here recently. Then my mom got sick. When she said the last sentence, her voice cracked and she couldn't hold back her emotions. Tammy placed a hand on her shoulder. It's okay. We can talk about it later, whenever you feel like it. By the way, we've got this wonderful guitar player. If you want, he can accompany your singing. Dorothy shrugged her shoulders and said, Well, I don't know. I've never tried singing to a guitar. I guess you can try now. Tammy was more worried than Dorothy. Kevin was also bustling about, setting up the mic and a chair for Dorothy. The audience watched it all unfold in the hall. Finally, everything was ready. The guitar player sat in the corner of the stage, without a mic for now. He said he would join in if it worked out. As the music unfolded, Tammy realized that Dorothy's singing wasn't ordinary at all. It was something she had never heard before. It had to have a name or some sort of classification, but Tammy couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. The song Dorothy sang was entirely unfamiliar to Tammy. It felt like a captivating story, weaving an enchanting narrative that seemed to transcend time. The melody carried a sense of antiquity, as if it were a long-forgotten treasure, resurfacing to bewitch the listeners with its haunting beauty. As the song came to an end, the room was enveloped in absolute silence for a few moments. Then, as if a spell had been broken, everyone in the hall rose to their feet. The sound of thunderous applause filled the air as the audience expressed their admiration and awe for Dorothy's mesmerizing performance. Several audience members, moved by Dorothy's captivating performance, approached the stage and placed money at her feet. Among the bills, there were some particularly large denominations, reflecting the deep impression she had made on their listeners. Dorothy glanced at the money with a frightened expression, then shifted her gaze to Tammy. Sensing her unease, Tammy approached Dorothy with a warm, reassuring smile, offering her comfort and support. They're yours. You've earned them, Tammy said. Dorothy accepted the money. I can buy some medicine for Mom. Sure. Do you have just one song? No, I know a lot of songs. My grandma taught me. These are all her songs. She composed them all herself. An hour later, Tammy guided Dorothy down from the stage. I know more songs. I think you need to take a break, honey. Have some tea, get something to eat, and if you want, you can go back and sing more, Tammy suggested, keeping Dorothy's well-being in mind. After the break, Dorothy resumed singing, this time accompanied by the guitar. With its gentle and delicate melodies, the guitar complemented her voice perfectly, elevating her songs to the status of true masterpieces. The audience was captivated once again, utterly spellbound by the magic of Dorothy's performance. Tammy listened intently to Dorothy's performance, her eyes fixated on the young girl as she sang. The song that Dorothy was performing at that moment was the most extraordinary of all. The melody was intricate and complex, with a unique rhythm that Tammy had never heard before. As she listened, Tammy felt as if she were being transported to another world, one that existed beyond the confines of time and space. For some inexplicable reason, Tammy found herself becoming emotional as she listened to Dorothy's captivating performance. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she struggled to keep them from spilling over. The beauty and power of Dorothy's voice and the melody were so overwhelming that Tammy couldn't help but feel moved by the sheer intensity of it all. She took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears, and continued to listen, transfixed by the magic unfolding before her. At first, Tammy didn't quite comprehend why she was feeling so emotional, but as she listened to Dorothy's performance, something clicked in her mind, and she realized that the song was an ancient lullaby. The melody was so hauntingly beautiful that it had touched a deep chord within her, evoking memories and emotions that she had long forgotten. As Don drove up to the restaurant, he noticed that the parking lot was unusually full of cars. At first he was surprised, but then he quickly realized that his restaurant was always bustling with activity. He parked his car and made his way towards the entrance, eager to see what was happening inside. Don took a moment to enjoy the fresh, post-rain air outside before heading inside. But as he approached the entrance, he changed his mind and decided to take a detour, opting instead to head to the patio. As he made his way there, he could hear the sound of someone singing on the stage inside. Curiosity piqued, Don quickened his pace, eager to see who was performing. As a restaurant owner who had always been on the lookout for talented performers, Don had developed a keen sense of what made a great singer. He couldn't help but notice the strong, powerful voice of the young girl on stage, and he found himself becoming more and more entranced by her performance. Suddenly, something about her singing made Don freeze in his tracks. His heart started pounding as a thought crossed his mind, and he couldn't shake off the feeling that he had heard that voice before. Don couldn't believe his ears. He took a few more steps closer to the stage, straining to hear the girl's voice more clearly. As she continued to sing, he felt a sense of familiarity wash over him. He knew he had heard that song before, but it had been a long time since he had last heard it. He couldn't see the girl's face since she was standing sideways to him, but the more he listened, the more convinced he became that he had heard that song before. As he reflected on his memories, he realized that the person who had sung that song to him before was a very kind and gentle girl who had mentioned that her mother had taught her to sing those songs. The memory flooded back to him, and he felt a deep sense of nostalgia and longing. It was as if a part of his past that he had long forgotten had suddenly resurfaced, brought to life once again through the voice of this talented young girl. His mind drifted back to a time when he and his friends had set out on a journey into the Alaskan wilderness. He remembered the excitement and anticipation of the trip, the thrill of adventure that had spurred them on. It had been a time of youth, of carefree abandon, and of the kind of wildness that can only be found in the vast, untamed expanse of the natural world. He remembered one particular day when they had to navigate down a river in boats. The water was choppy and treacherous, and the boats were barely holding together as they bounced and rocked along the current. The current had swept him away, making it difficult for him to steer his boat out of its grasp. He had struggled against the water, his muscles straining as he tried to stay afloat, and for a moment he had felt a sense of panic rise within him. He was carried along the current, helpless to steer himself away from the waterfall that loomed ahead. And then, as he went over the edge, everything had become a blur of motion and sensation. He had felt himself flipping upside down, his heart pounding in his chest as he tumbled head over heels towards the water below. After hitting the water, he had seen a flash of light in his eyes, and then everything had gone dark. He had woken up in a small hut, surrounded by unfamiliar faces and sounds. He felt disoriented and confused, his body aching and sore from the fall. And then, slowly, he had become aware of a young girl standing beside him, her face full of concern and kindness. She had explained to him that she was a local from a nearby village, and that she and her family had found him unconscious and pulled him from the river. It was a simple village with its dozen or so houses nestled amidst the rugged landscape of the Alaskan wilderness, and he remembered the family that had taken him in. the old mother who had welcomed him with open arms, and the young girl who had nursed him back to health. When Don hit the surface of the water, he also hit a rock. That's when he had lost consciousness. His body was tossed about by the swirling water, his skin scraped raw against the rough surfaces of the rocks and branches that lined the riverbed. The gentle touch of the girl's hands tended to his wounds, her soothing voice calm as she spoke words of comfort and encouragement. The girl had been just a few years younger than him, but she had taken charge of his care with a maturity beyond her years. She had applied herbs and poultices to his wounds and had nursed him back to health with a steady diet of fish and berries gathered from the surrounding forest. Dawn had been touched by the kindness and generosity of this stranger who had taken him into her home and treated him with such care and concern. Sometimes the girl sang him lullabies. The gentle melodies had soothed his troubled mind and helped him to relax into a deep and restful sleep. He realized now that there was something universal and timeless about lullabies. They had the power to comfort and calm even in the most difficult of circumstances. As he lay in the small hut, Don had had ample time to reflect on his life and the choices he had made up until that point. He had been a successful businessman, but he had also been consumed by a restless ambition that left little room for anything else. Now, lying there in the care of this young girl and her mother, he realized how much he had been missing. He had been so focused on his own success and achievement that he had forgotten the value of human connection and the importance of living a life that was guided by compassion and kindness. A week had passed since the accident, and finally he began to feel better. With renewed strength, he ventured outside and was immediately captivated by the beauty of the natural world that surrounded him. The lush green trees, vibrant flowers, and crystal clear streams were breathtaking, and he couldn't help but marvel at the wonders of nature. As he explored the area, he noticed the subtle details that made this place so special. The gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze, the chirping of birds in the distance, and the sweet fragrance of wildflowers all contributed to the serene atmosphere that enveloped him. Don couldn't help but be captivated by the beauty of the girl who had taken care of him and nursed him back to health. As she went about her work around the house, he found himself stealing glances at her, admiring her grace and poise. Her long flowing hair shimmered in the sunlight, and her eyes sparkled with a kindness and warmth that Don found irresistible. He watched as she moved with effortless ease, tending to the plants in the garden and preparing meals in the kitchen. Don felt a sense of gratitude towards her that went beyond words. It wasn't just that she had taken care of him when he was sick, but it was also the way she had done it, with such care, compassion, and dedication. He knew that he would never be able to repay her for what she had done for him. As Don and Elsie spent time together in the village, they got to know each other better. One day, while they were sitting by the river, Elsie told Don her name. He couldn't help but chuckle a little, and she asked him what was so amusing. Don explained that he had never heard the name Elsie before, and that it sounded funny to him. Elsie smiled and asked Don if he liked any other names. Don thought for a moment and said that he liked the name Dorothy. Elsie was surprised but pleased with Don's answer. She thought that Dorothy was a lovely name and asked him why he liked it. Don told her that it reminded him of his grandmother, who had been a kind and gentle woman with a warm heart. The attraction between the young ones had been growing stronger each day, and eventually they gave in to their feelings. They spent the night together, wrapped in each other's arms, and lost in the passion of the moment. However, their moment of bliss was interrupted the following day when Don's friends finally arrived. After searching for him for over 2 weeks, they had tracked him down to the small village where he had been staying. Don was overjoyed to see his friends, and he rushed to greet them, eager to catch up on all that had happened during his time away. However, as he introduced him to the girl who had taken care of him, he sensed the tension in the air. It didn't take long for his friends to notice the closeness between Don and the girl, and they couldn't help but feel a little suspicious. They had always been protective of Don, and they didn't want to see him hurt. The girl was indeed sad to see Don go, and his promise to come back and take her with him had given her hope for a better future. She believed in his promise, and she eagerly awaited his return. However, as days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, the girl began to lose hope. She heard nothing from Don, and the memory of their time together began to fade. Meanwhile, Don had returned to his busy life in the city, overwhelmed with work and chores. As time passed, he found himself getting caught up in the hustle and bustle of city life, and he gradually forgot about his promise to the girl. Don had been standing on the patio, lost in thought, as he listened to a song that reminded him of Elsie. As the song ended, Don walked into the restaurant and headed straight to his office. He sat down at his desk, staring at the computer screen, but his mind was elsewhere. Tammy noticed him and walked over to him. "Mr. Brooks, what a surprise to see you here today. We weren't expecting you." "Expect me any day, Tammy." "That girl, can you ask her to come to my office? I want to know where she knows these songs from." "I was actually planning to ask her the same question. I've never heard anything like it." Dorothy sat in front of Don, trembling with fear. As he looked into her eyes, he couldn't help but cough uncontrollably for a few seconds. They were the most stunning yellowish eyes he had ever seen. The only person he knew with such captivating eyes was Elsie. Finally, Don found the strength and courage to smile at Dorothy, trying to ease her fears. "I only look scary. I'm actually quite kind. It's nice to meet you. Can you tell me a little more about yourself?" Dorothy looked relieved and began to relax a bit as she shared her story. But as soon as Don heard her name, he froze and looked at her with a mix of shock and disbelief. Tammy, who had been silently observing everything, stepped forward to ask if Don was okay. After a few moments, Don managed to compose himself enough to ask the question that had been weighing on his mind. "What's your mother's name, kid?" Dorothy answered without hesitation. "My mother's name is Elsie. She's in the hospital sick and doesn't know I'm here. Grandma always wanted us to move to this town for some reason. When she passed away a few months ago, Mom and I moved here." Tammy was getting more and more confused as the conversation unfolded. Don's head was getting lower and lower as he struggled to process the information he was hearing. He couldn't believe what he was thinking, but he had a feeling that Dorothy was his daughter. He asked himself why he hadn't known about her all these years, if she was indeed his daughter. As Don struggled with his thoughts and emotions, Tammy looked at him with concern and asked, "Is everything okay, Mr. Brooks?" Don didn't say anything. It turned out that Elsie had never stopped waiting for Don all these years, because he had promised to come back. Don lifted his head and asked Dorothy, "Where's your mom right now?" Dorothy replied, "She was taken to the hospital, and we got evicted from the room we had been renting. The doctors told us we don't have medical insurance, and they won't treat her." Don felt a wave of sadness and guilt wash over him. Elsie and Dorothy had moved to the town 6 months ago. They rented a small apartment and everything seemed to be going well. Elsie worked long hours as a dishwasher in a nearby restaurant trying to make ends meet. Meanwhile, Dorothy used her beautiful voice to earn some extra money by singing in the streets. Initially, they were getting by and had sufficient funds for food. However, as the rent continued to rise, their income struggled to keep pace. They faced difficulty in qualifying for other rental properties, as landlords typically demanded tenants to have an income 3 or 4 times the monthly rent. Moreover, their previous eviction further complicated matters, as many property owners were hesitant to rent to them due to their tainted rental history. As a result, Elsie and Dorothy found themselves in a challenging situation, struggling to secure a new and affordable place to call home. Don rose from his chair and glanced at Tammy. "I believe she's at the public hospital. We should go. Immediately." Don hesitated for a moment as he approached Dorothy. Then, grabbing her hand, he led her out. Tammy watched him intently from beneath her hat as he passed by. Don instructed Dorothy to wait outside before returning to his office and closing the door. "Why are you staring at me like that, Tammy?" "No, it's not what you're thinking. I had no idea. How could I have known? You know me, right? Am I heartless? Tell me." Tammy looked up at Don and grinned. "You've got ink on your nose." She burst into laughter but quickly grew serious. Gazing up at Don, she inquired, "What are you planning to do? I hope you're happy about the situation." Don sighed and responded, "Tammy, this is precisely why I've never let you leave the restaurant. You know how to ask the tough questions." He thought for a moment before continuing, "Ultimately, Yes, I am happy, but my feelings are mixed at the moment, especially because of Elsie. I don't know the extent of her condition. By the time Dawn and Dorothy arrived at the hospital, night had fallen. Unfortunately, due to Elsie's lack of medical insurance and her inability to provide a deposit for additional tests, the doctors could only keep her stable. That was the extent of the care they were able to offer. Dorothy waited patiently in the hallway while Dawn entered the ward and caught sight of Elsie. His heart skipped a beat upon seeing her lying on the bed, asleep and unaware of his presence. He stood there taking in her appearance as long-lost memories came flooding back to him. Despite the dark circles under her eyes and her frail figure due to malnutrition, Elsie's natural beauty shone through, not allowing her illness to overshadow her. Dawn slowly approached the bed and sat down at the edge. Taking her hand in his, he gazed at her face for a long time. A wave of sadness washed over him, and he fought back the urge to cry. Dawn managed to hold back the tears that threatened to spill over and blur his vision. Instead, an uncomfortable lump formed in his throat, creating a burning sensation. As he closed his eyes, Dorothy's face appeared before him, leaving little room for doubt that she was indeed his daughter. The striking resemblance between them was undeniable, further solidifying his suspicions. Dawn's emotions finally got the better of him, and a few teardrops fell onto Elsie's hand, betraying the overwhelming feelings that had been welling up inside him. Elsie's eyes, heavy from the sedatives, slowly opened as she felt the tears on her hand. A slightly tilted head with tear-filled eyes gazed at her, revealing the depth of emotion in that moment. Elsie furrowed her brows in a visible frown, her groggy mind attempting to make sense of the situation and understand the emotional scene before her. "I'm so sorry, Elsie," Dawn whispered, his voice laden with regret. It was evident that Elsie was too weak to immediately respond, as she struggled to process what she had heard. Or perhaps it was her generous heart that prompted her to simply offer a faint, forgiving smile in response to Dawn's heartfelt apology. "It's okay," she whispered softly. "No, it's not okay. I'm sorry, Elsie. I didn't keep my promise," Dawn said through his tears, which were flowing even more freely now. Despite her own tears, Elsie continued to smile, and in that moment, her smile and tears only served to enhance her beauty, adding a tender warmth to her expression. "Please take care of Dorothy," Elsie implored. A few minutes later, doctors entered the room and began preparing to move Elsie. Dorothy, overwhelmed with emotion, sobbed loudly as she buried her face into her mother's shoulder. Gently, Elsie stroked her daughter's hair, offering what comfort she could in her heart-wrenching moment. "Everything's gonna be okay. Mr. Brooks promised you will be taken care of," Elsie reassured her daughter. "Mommy, I love you so much. Promise me you won't leave me alone. Promise me, please." "You won't be alone, baby. You'll have a—" At that moment, Elsie glanced at Dawn, who looked at Dorothy with eyes filled with guilt. Dorothy's gaze shifted between Dawn and Elsie, then back to Dawn. She carefully studied his features for a while. During this process, her facial expressions transitioned from doubt to realization, and then back to doubt before the truth finally dawned on her. In that moment, her expression gradually changed from sympathy for her mother to a visible anger directed towards her father. Dawn gazed at Dorothy with sympathy, understanding the complexity of her emotions. He desperately wanted to offer her a comforting hug in that moment, but he held back, allowing her the space to process the situation and decide how to move forward. "I'm sorry, kiddo. I didn't know about you at all. If I had known you existed, I would have done everything in my power, even give my life to be there for you. Please forgive me," Dawn pleaded, his voice full of sincerity and regret. Elsie took her daughter's hand and gently calmed her down. "Honey, your father has a good heart. We were both young and—" She trailed off, acknowledging that their past decisions and circumstances had led them to this point, but emphasizing Dawn's good intentions. As the doctors wheeled Elsie out and prepared to place her in the ambulance, Dorothy asked Dawn, "Where are they taking her?" "I've arranged everything at a private clinic. She's going to be treated, and she'll be back with us soon, Dorothy." When the ambulance left, Dawn said to Dorothy, "Let's go home?" He waited for her reaction. She stood motionless, and Dawn opened the passenger door of his truck for her without saying anything. Dorothy remained there, emotionless and exhausted from the day's revelations. She hardly even noticed what Don had been doing all this time. Don approached her and stood very close to her. He opened his arms as if asking for permission to hug her. He took another small step towards her and she slowly leaned her head on his chest. Finally, for the first time, Don hugged his daughter. He felt an incredible sense of happiness and contentment knowing that this girl, with her silky hair and soft shoulders, was his own daughter. He could feel a surge of energy flowing into him, making him feel like a proud father. "Thank you for giving me a second chance," he whispered. It took some time for Dorothy to adjust to living in a stranger's house, especially since that stranger was also her father. But as the days went by, they began to build a relationship and understand one another, slowly forging a bond that had been missing for so long. The day following Elsie's transfer to a cozy private clinic, Don paid her a visit. It was a lovely day with a refreshing breeze that came after a night of heavy rainfall. Don's heart was brimming with joy and satisfaction, as in just one day he found himself a family. Before driving to the clinic, Don decided to stop by the restaurant. As always, it was teeming with customers, but he managed to pull the manager Tammy and her assistant Kevin aside for a brief conversation. "Who came up with the idea for Dorothy to sing here?" Don inquired, looking at Tammy and Kevin. They exchanged concerned glances before Tammy spoke up. "Mr. Brooks, I apologize. It was our idea, both Kevin's and mine. We thought Dorothy had a beautiful voice and—" Tammy's explanation was cut short as Don interrupted her. "So you're telling me it wasn't one of you, but both of you came up with the idea together?" "We did. I kept telling Tammy we should bring Dorothy over. I'm so sorry, Mr. Brooks, if that was against the restaurant's rules," Kevin admitted, being a recent addition to the restaurant's team. Don stared at them intently. His stern expression slowly transformed into a smile. "Relax, both of you. You did great. Have I told you how much I don't want you to leave?" He directed the last part at Tammy and grinned. "Man, you scared us, Mr. Brooks." Tammy sighed with relief and started to laugh. "Okay, guys. I don't usually do this, but this is a special occasion. Follow me." Don led them to his office and wrote out 2 checks worth $20,000 each for Tammy and Kevin. They exchanged surprised looks at first, but then began dancing in excitement. All right, guys. Back to work. It's the start of a busy day." Upon arriving at the clinic, the doctors provided Don with an update on Elsie's condition. He peered through the window into her room and saw 3 medical professionals attentively caring for her. Don felt hopeful that Elsie would soon recover. Carrying a large bouquet of flowers, he entered the room where Elsie was resting. The nurses, noticing Don, decided to leave them alone for some private time. Don gently placed the bouquet on a nearby stand and took a seat next to Elsie's bed. "How are you feeling, Elsie?" "I'm feeling much better. Thank you for everything." "Elsie, thank you for everything. I've never even realized that you were the reason I'm still alive and here. I've never even properly thanked you. I'm going to fix it now, if you let me." A month later, Elsie was getting discharged from the clinic. She looked so beautiful and healthy. Tammy and Kevin were busy decorating the restaurant for the special dinner tonight. Dorothy was nervous. She was getting prepared to sing on stage to her parents. It was a beautiful day for everyone. Elsie and Don danced in the middle of the hall to Elsie's beautiful and melodic singing. When the evening drew to its end, Tammy approached Don as he was standing on the patio and smoking. Don was looking into the distance, immersed in thoughts. "So, why did you never go back?" Don didn't look at Tammy. He was amused at her question. "Tammy, did I tell you I didn't want you to leave the restaurant?" Tammy smiled. She knew she hit the nail on the head with her question, but he didn't say anything to her. The reason why Don never went back to Elsie was quite simple, but he never talked about it to anyone. He wanted to keep it a secret because he might ruin everything. The reason he never went back was because he loved Elsie so much that he wanted to forget her. She was so beautiful that he was scared of losing her. He knew now that it was foolish to think of it that way, but that's how he felt back then. He was young and scared about his feelings for her, but when he realized that his actions had consequences, he decided to try work things out. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he was happy that he had a beautiful daughter and a potential wife. 12-year-old Sophia came home from school earlier than expected because her drawing class was cancelled. Pushing open the door, she immediately noticed the raised voices of her father, Kevin, and his girlfriend, Jessica, coming from the living room. "Kevin, please reconsider. Sending her to a boarding school isn't a solution. She's just a child. Yes, she can be difficult at times, but remember, she's only 12 and she's still grieving her mother," Jessica pleaded. Kevin's voice, heavy with weariness and sorrow, replied, "Jessica, we've done everything we can, right? Yet nothing seems to work with her. Maybe a year at boarding school might help her learn discipline and respect, which we can't seem to instill in her." Hearing this, Sophia felt a sudden wave of dizziness, a sensation she'd been experiencing often. Still, she remained hidden, wanting to hear more. "How can you even think of such a thing, Kevin? She's your daughter," Jessica exclaimed with increasing frustration. The conversation revealed that Jessica and Kevin were debating whether to send Sophia to a boarding school. Kevin believed that it might help Sophia learn better behavior and respect. Ever since Jessica had become a part of their lives, Sophia had been resistant, even resentful, not wanting anything to do with her. It had been over 5 years since the sad departure of Kevin's wife, Ellie. Sophia was still struggling to come to terms with her mother's absence and the presence of Jessica in their lives. Rewinding to 10 years ago, Kevin's life was quite different. He was hustling, working at a friend's restaurant, waiting tables during the day, and attending evening classes. His father had always taught him to strive for 2 things in life: building a successful business and nurturing a loving family. Kevin was a determined man, always pushing forward to achieve his dreams. One day at the gym, while he was adjusting the weights on his machine, he noticed Ellie looking confused with a leg press. Seizing the chance to help, he walked over, flashing a warm smile. "Need some assistance with that?" he offered. Caught off guard but appreciative, Ellie responded, "Yes, thank you. I'm not familiar with this one." Graciously, Kevin guided her through the setup and proper usage. From that simple interaction, they struck up a conversation that flowed naturally. Ellie, a kind-hearted woman with strong values, had been in a relationship with Sean, but things didn't last, and after daughter Sophia was born, Sean left. Ellie found herself solely responsible for their young daughter. Being an attractive person, Ellie was used to getting attention, but whenever she mentioned her past marriage and her daughter, many men would lose interest. Kevin, however, was different. "The fact that you have a daughter doesn't change how I feel about you," he told Ellie when she shared her story. Deep inside, Kevin felt it was a significant detail, but he chose not to voice that concern in front of Ellie. Kevin took his time pondering the implications. Having never been in a serious relationship before, this was new territory for him. His mother had always taught him to emphasize and to see things from others' perspectives, so he reflected on Ellie's situation. If he were raising a child alone, how would he want someone to view him? He chose understanding and compassion. Kevin appreciated Ellie's honesty about her past. It showed him that she valued transparency, which only deepened his admiration for her. Their initial encounters at the gym transformed into delightful coffee dates. The more they spent time together, the more they found shared interests, like their mutual love for outdoor adventures and an undeniable appreciation for Italian food. What puzzled Kevin, though, was Ellie's silence about her daughter Sophia. Despite being a mother, Ellie never mentioned Sophia during their dates. She didn't reschedule or prioritize her daughter over their time together. Having grown up in a large family, Kevin was familiar with the demands of raising kids. Gathering his courage one day, he asked Ellie why Sophia never came up in their conversations. "Because you never asked?" she answered simply, catching Kevin by surprise, his face turning a shade of pink. Noticing his discomfort, Ellie smiled warmly, adding, "It's okay, Kevin. I sensed your hesitation a while back. Understand this, I'm not only searching for a potential husband. If you just want to enjoy our time together without involving Sophia, that's fine. We can keep things uncomplicated." Kevin was taken aback by her candidness, not having anticipated such an open response. Feeling reassured, he surprised her by asking to meet Sophia on their upcoming date. Fast forward a month, and the trio, Kevin, Ellie, and little Sophia, were inseparable.
Their weekends were filled with sunlit picnics, visits to art galleries, and even some playful dance lessons. Kevin and Ellie quickly realized that their connection was deepening into something more significant than just friendship. The more time they spent together, the clearer it became that they shared a special bond. One evening, as they dined at their go-to Italian restaurant, Kevin took a deep breath and ventured, "Do you ever think about us as, well, more than just friends?" Ellie, her eyes shining with mischief, answered, "Every day since we first met." While Kevin's parents were understanding of his choices, believing he was mature enough to make his own decisions, not everyone shared their confidence. Some friends and family members expressed their doubts about his relationship with Ellie. Uncle Dave and Aunt Jasmine were particularly vocal. Both had previously been in relationships with partners who had children and had faced challenges. Aunt Jasmine warned Kevin, "Be cautious. Children who aren't biologically yours can sometimes hold that against you. What will you do if she grows up and throws that in your face?" Uncle Dave was even more direct. He cornered Kevin one day and said, "Think twice before you dive deep into this, Kevin. Being with a woman who has a child can complicate things. When issues arise, disciplining the child isn't always straightforward. You're committing not just to Ellie, but also to her daughter. Do you truly understand what that entails?" Kevin was taken aback by the intensity of their feelings, but he knew he had to trust his judgment and feelings for Ellie and Sophia. Despite the doubters and naysayers, the trio shared a harmonious life for the next year. Kevin's affection for young Sophia grew daily, and she quickly found a special place in his heart. Tired of the constant negative comments from others, Kevin made the bold decision to move his little family to a different town for a fresh start. A year later, he and Ellie exchanged vows, with the adorable 3-year-old Sophia proudly taking on the role of ring bearer. Kevin had always envisioned that he'd find his one true love, someone he'd spend his entire life with, and on his wedding day, he was confident that he had found her in Ellie. Yet life had its own twists and turns in store for them. The years following their wedding were prosperous for the family. Ellie was a pillar of support for Kevin, always there to uplift him during his business endeavors. After facing a few setbacks, Kevin eventually established a small construction firm that, to his delight, rapidly expanded. The couple had initially decided to keep the truth about Sophia's biological father a secret until she was old enough to understand. This was their agreement for the time being. Over the next 5 years, their lives were filled with joy and success. Kevin's business flourished, becoming a renowned name in the industry. With their lives on a steady course, Kevin and Ellie began contemplating expanding their family. One evening, after they'd settled down from a warm family dinner, Ellie looked at Kevin with awareness in her eyes. "Kevin," she began, hesitating for a moment, "I've been feeling so drained recently. It's not just everyday fatigue. It's something more." Kevin, noticing the worry in her voice, gently took her hand. "What do you mean? Is everything okay?" Ellie had been deeply involved in Kevin's business lately, preparing to take the reins of the marketing department. "I thought it was just the stress of work, but it's different. I've been waking up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, burning up with fever. And now, even a simple cold seems to linger and knock me down. This isn't like me." Concerned, Kevin urged her to see a doctor. "Let's not take any chances. Let's see someone about this." At the hospital, the initial tests were inconclusive. Doctors ran a gamut of examinations, but couldn't immediately pinpoint the issue. The waiting was agonizing. It felt like an eternity before they had an answer. Finally, a somber-faced doctor approached them. "I'm afraid I have some difficult news," he began, choosing his words carefully. "Ellie, you have been diagnosed with lymphoblastic leukemia." Both Ellie and Kevin were stunned into silence, trying to process the weight of what they just heard. Kevin squeezed Ellie's hand tightly, searching for words of comfort. "We'll face this together, every step of the way. You are not alone." The diagnosis felt like a heavy weight on Kevin's shoulders. After numerous consultations and examinations, the doctors concluded that chemotherapy was the only viable option to treat Ellie's condition. The treatment sapped Ellie's strength, leaving her frail. For the subsequent 2 years, Kevin found himself juggling between the responsibilities of his business and supporting Ellie at home. Recognizing the toll the treatment took on her, Ellie made the heart-wrenching decision to step back from work and focus on spending quality time with Sophia. One evening, as Ellie was tucking Sophia into bed, the young girl, sensing the change in her mother's energy, asked, "Mommy, why are you home all the time now? Why aren't you going to work with Daddy?" Ellie, taking a moment to gather her thoughts, replied gently, "Sweetie, Mommy isn't feeling too well lately, so I'm taking a break from work to spend more time with you." Sophia's innocent eyes widened. "You're not feeling good? Like when I had the flu?" Ellie nodded, giving her daughter a soft smile. "Yes, something like that. But don't worry, darling. Daddy and I are doing everything we can to make me feel better." As days turned into weeks, Kevin's optimism waned. Ellie's once vibrant demeanor had faded. She became gaunt and her energy levels plummeted. Most days, she remained confined to her bed, with the strength of her voice diminishing. On a rare day when she felt slightly better, Ellie beckoned Kevin to sit beside her. With considerable effort and in a feeble voice, she said, "Kevin, if something happens to me, promise me you'll look after Sophia. She'll need a caring mother's touch." The sheer weight of her words and the reality of their situation hit Kevin hard. He had been trying to stay strong, holding back his emotions for so long, but hearing Ellie's plea broke him. Tears welled up in his eyes, streaming down his face as he whispered back, "I promise, Ellie. I promise." After Ellie's passing, Sophia seemed to accept the loss with a surprising level of calmness. Perhaps the preceding months, seeing her mother weakened and bedridden, had prepared her in some way. Ellie had gently explained to Sophia in the past, telling her that sometimes God calls good people to be with him, and that one day she might be one of those people. However, Sophia's initial composed demeanor was short-lived. 3 days after Ellie's departure, the dam of emotions burst. Sophia, who had held herself together, was suddenly overwhelmed with the reality of her mother's absence. She cried uncontrollably, the weight of her loss fully sinking in. The house that Kevin and Sophia shared was filled with memories of Ellie, from her clothes hanging in the wardrobe to her favorite books on the shelf and the pictures of her radiant smile that adorned the walls. In the weeks that followed her passing, Kevin was consumed by grief. However, he understood the importance of moving forward, especially for Sophia's sake. He found solace in his work, and as the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the pain started to fade. Children, with their resilient nature, tend to adapt quickly. A year later, it seemed as if Sophia had bounced back, living her life as if the tragedy had never occurred. But Kevin knew that the memories of her mother were safely tucked away in her heart. Kevin's business flourished, and as it grew, so did Sophia. With the expansion of his business, Kevin began collaborating with more partners and companies. During a work meeting, he was introduced to Jessica, a sharp and captivating manager representing one of their partner companies. Their professional discussions soon ventured into personal chats. Before long, they were seeing each other outside of work. Feeling the growing bond between them, Kevin felt it was essential for Jessica to know about his past. He opened up about being a widower and having a 12-year-old daughter. Her response, "It doesn't really change anything for me," was strikingly reminiscent of Kevin's words when he first met Ellie. This coincidence, paired with his mother's advice about empathy, brought a chuckle to Kevin's lips. After dating Jessica for over 6 months, she posed a question he hadn't anticipated. "So, when do I get to meet Sophia?" Kevin was taken aback. He hadn't considered how Sophia would feel about him dating again. Sophia's reaction to the news was far from positive. She felt a profound sense of betrayal, not just towards Kevin, but also towards the memory of her mother. To Sophia, it felt like Kevin was trying to replace Ellie, and she wasn't ready to accept that. Kevin found himself in a challenging situation, one he hadn't anticipated. In hindsight, he wished he had eased Sophia into the idea more gradually, maybe setting up a casual meeting with Jessica or mentioning her initially as just a friend. However, what's done was done, and now he faced the repercussions. Neither Kevin nor Jessica had realized the delicate intricacies of introducing a new figure into Sophia's life after Ellie. After days of receiving a cold reception from Sophia, she reluctantly agreed to meet Jessica. As the moment approached, Sophia's emotions bubbled up. Her eyes glistened with tears, and a lump formed in her throat. "Do I have to call her mom now?" Sophia uttered, her voice quivering with emotion. Kevin, sensing his daughter's turmoil, replied gently, "You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with." He brushed her hair softly and continued, "I just hope you give her a chance, Soph. You've always been wise beyond your years, right?" Overwhelmed, Sophia couldn't contain her tears any longer and dashed into her room. A few days passed, and the day of the introduction came. Jessica, with her short brunette hair, walked into the living room. "Sophia," Kevin began, "this is Jessica, the person I told you about." With a sincere smile, Jessica extended her hand, saying, "Hi, Sophia. Kevin's told me so much about you. You can just call me Jessica." Sophia's response was curt. "I need to finish my homework," she said, evading Jessica's friendly gesture. As she made her way to her room, she overheard Jessica's empathetic comment to Kevin. "It's okay. It's new for all of us. We all need time." Jessica's tone remained steady, even in the face of Sophia's chilly reception. That night, Kevin entered Sophia's room, his expression serious. "Sophia, acting this way isn't helping anyone. Jessica genuinely wants to get to know you. She even offered to help with your homework." "I don't need her help," Sophia mumbled, looking away. The next morning, as she finished her breakfast, Sophia stood up, intending to leave without clearing her plate. "Aren't you forgetting something?" Kevin asked, nodding towards the unwashed dishes. "We have a new lady in the house. Let her take care of it," Sophia said cheekily, not meeting Jessica's eyes. "No worries, Kevin. I've got it," Jessica replied, gracefully sidestepping the tension. Kevin hoped for Jessica to become a more permanent presence in their home, but Jessica hesitated, feeling it might complicate things further for Sophia. Months later, though, Sophia seemed more open to the idea, suggesting that Kevin could invite Jessica over. One crisp autumn weekend, Jessica tentatively knocked on Sophia's door. "Sophia," she began, "your dad and I thought it'd be nice to walk in the park. The fall colors are just beautiful. Would you want to come with us?" Sophia was curt in her response. "Just go without me. I don't want to go. Please, leave," she added, turning her back to Jessica. "All right, maybe some other time," Jessica replied gently, leaving the room. Moments later, Sophia could hear her father's raised voice. "Enough is enough. She has to come with us. I'm tired of her acting out." Jessica, however, intervened, her tone calm, yet firm. "Kevin, forcing her isn't the answer. We need to be patient. Pushing too hard now might create even more distance between you two. Let's give her time." Sophia's routine had become clear. A swift exit to her room after meals, minimal conversation, and a palpable air of resentment, especially towards Jessica. It was a month into this silent rebellion when Jessica mentioned their upcoming Friday plans. "Sophia, Kevin and I will be out on Friday evening for a friend's birthday," she said, trying to maintain a neutral tone. Sophia's next question took Jessica by surprise. "What will you be wearing?" Pleased that Sophia was showing interest, Jessica enthusiastically opened her closet to display the elegant evening dress she had picked out. "Do you like it?" she asked with a hopeful glint in her eye. Sophia shrugged. "It's okay." The following day, a shock awaited Jessica. Her beautiful dress lay shredded on her bed, rendering it completely unwearable. Kevin's face reddened with anger when he saw the ruined fabric. "What on earth does she think she's doing?" he exclaimed, his voice raising with every word. Before he could continue his tirade, Jessica, ever the voice of reason, interrupted. "Kevin, let's talk to Sophia first. Understand her reasons before we jump to conclusions." "She's just trying to ruin our evening, Jess. It's evident she can't stand you being around." Kevin's frustration was evident. Jessica took a deep breath. She's still grappling with the loss of her mother, and seeing her dad with someone else is hard. We can't forget that she's just a kid. I'll wear something else to the party. Although, she added with a slight sigh, I did love that dress. Jessica's unexpected defense stunned Sophia. She had hoped Jessica would retaliate, maybe even leave for good. Seeing them share happy moments was a constant reminder of her mother's absence. So every time laughter or the sounds of their shared conversations reached her ears, she would retreat to her sanctuary and cocoon herself in silence. Whenever Kevin found himself alone with his thoughts, doubt and frustration began to cloud his judgment. He felt cornered by Sophia's behavior, believing she was deliberately trying to manipulate him and stop him from moving on with his life. One particularly difficult day, in a moment of exasperation, he threatened to send her to a boarding school if her behavior didn't change. Jessica was stunned when she heard about Kevin's ultimatum. "I get that she isn't your biological daughter," she began cautiously, "but you've been her father figure ever since she was tiny. How can you even think of pushing her away? She might not have warmed up to me, but you're the only father she's ever known." That very day, Sophia decided to skip school. Retreating to her room, she was consumed by thoughts of the happy times she had shared with her father. They had been close, with Kevin teaching her to swim, introducing her to the game of chess, and sharing countless other precious moments. Now, it felt like he was ready to cast her aside. She blamed Jessica for this growing rift between them. Locked in her room without food or company, Sophia's health began to wane. By evening, as she tried to leave her room, her vision started to blur. Moments later, she found herself collapsing, and darkness took over. When she woke up, she was in her bed, with Jessica's concerned face hovering over her. "Sophia, you gave us quite the scare," Jessica whispered, her voice trembling with concern. "You just collapsed in the hallway. We had to call for medical help. The doctor said it might have been because of excessive stress." Sophia, still feeling weak and disoriented, simply turned her head away, wanting to avoid any conversation. Jessica gently rearranged the cool cloth on Sophia's forehead. "Try to rest," she whispered, leaving the room. "We can talk when you're up for it." The morning sun was still in its infancy, casting a pale light into Sophia's room. She was still weak and was advised to take the day off from school. Jessica, ever concerned, decided it was best for Sophia to see a doctor. The young girl heard Jessica on the phone, making an appointment for her. "Do I really need to see a doctor?" Sophia asked, her voice wavering with a hint of nervousness. "Look, Sophia," Jessica said gently, "I've noticed you've been looking a bit pale lately, and you tire easily. Plus, after what happened yesterday, it's best to make sure everything is okay." Sophia, not really knowing how to respond, just looked away, her thoughts miles away from the room. The doctor's office was filled with a strange silence after the initial consultation. "We'll need to run some tests before drawing any conclusions," the doctor advised. "Please get these done as soon as possible." Once the results were in, they found themselves back in the cold, sterile environment of the clinic. The atmosphere was tense. The doctor, with a heavy sigh, asked Jessica and Sophia to leave the room, indicating that he wanted to talk to Kevin alone. Once they were alone, the doctor delivered the devastating news. "I'm afraid Sophia has been diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, the same type her mother had." Kevin felt a rush of emotions. Shock, despair, and guilt engulfed him. All he could think of was Sophia and how he was about to lose another loved one. He clenched his fists, trying to stay composed. "What do we do now?" he managed to ask. The doctor explained the severity of the situation. "Sophia is at a stage where the disease can progress rapidly. A bone marrow transplant is critical, and the sooner we find a donor, the better." Kevin's mind raced as he processed the dire situation. Sophia's rare blood type, AB negative, made finding a donor even more daunting. Time was not on their side. "Your best chance is to test if either of you is a match," the doctor suggested. Kevin nodded, a fierce determination growing within him. He would do whatever it took to save his daughter. Kevin's heart pounded heavily as he clutched the doctor's table, trying to absorb the grim news. Memories of his wife Ellie flooded back. "Sophia's mother died of the same disease," he muttered, pain evident in his voice. "Did Sophia inherit this from her?" The doctor, showing a mix of sympathy and urgency, asked, "Kevin, what's your blood type? Every moment counts now." "I am O positive," Kevin replied with a heavy sigh. The doctor's next words further intensified Kevin's fears. "Finding a matching blood type is just a beginning. Convincing someone to become a bone marrow donor isn't easy. Many are reluctant due to the perceived risks." Amidst the whirlwind of conversations, Sophia, even though young, could sense the gravity of the situation. She mistakenly correlated her ailment to Jessica's arrival in their lives. That evening, overwhelmed with emotion, Sophia confronted Kevin. "If Jessica never came into our lives, I wouldn't be sick," she cried bitterly. Devastated, Kevin felt lost. His world seemed to crumble once more. As he stepped into the hallway, he saw Jessica. Their eyes met, and her face reflected the pain she felt, having overheard Sophia's words. I'm so sorry, Jess, Kevin murmured, regret evident in his eyes. I think it's best if we take a step back for now. Jessica nodded, pain evident in her eyes. I understand, Kevin. You need to do what's best for Sophia right now. She quietly began packing her bags, leaving a heartbroken Kevin behind. The following day was a blur for Kevin, as his hours were consumed with anxious phone calls and discussions in his desperate quest for a donor. During his mid-afternoon break, Dr. Deans was chatting with his colleagues when Jessica stormed into his office. Doctor, I have AB-negative blood. I want to be a donor for Sophia. Taken aback, Dr. Deans responded, But you weren't related by blood, right? No, I'm not, Jessica replied urgently. But if there is a chance I can help Sophia, what does that matter? Pondering for a moment, Dr. Deans nodded. You're right, every moment counts. But where are Kevin and Sophia? They should be here. Jessica quickly filled the doctor in on the recent events and their strained relationship. She pleaded with him to keep her identity as the potential donor a secret, suggesting he tell Kevin they found a donor just in time. All right, Dr. Deans agreed. First things first though, you need to gather your essentials and I'll kickstart the hospital admission process. We'll have to do a thorough check to ensure you're a fit donor. Later, when Kevin received the news of a found donor from Dr. Deans, relief washed over him. He turned to Sophia, squeezing her hand gently. Everything's gonna be all right, Sophia. I'll be with you every step of the way. Don't be afraid. As the medical tests confirmed Jessica's compatibility, Dr. Deans shared the news with her, admiration clear in his eyes. Jessica, your selflessness is remarkable. Despite the risks, you're stepping up for Sophia, as if she were your own. I've been in this profession for 2 decades, and your act stands out. Jessica simply nodded, emotion welling up in her eyes. All that matters is that Sophia gets a chance at life, she murmured. On the drive to the hospital, Kevin's mind swirled with a mixture of hope and disbelief. He sent up silent prayers, fervently hoping that everything would go smoothly for Sophia. Sophia's procedure was a success. For Jessica, the process was more intensive. Doctors harvested bone marrow from her under anesthesia. When Jessica awoke, her vision was hazy. The bright, sterile environment of the hospital room momentarily confused her. As the fog of anesthesia lifted, memories of her selfless act surfaced. A kindly nurse, seeing her stir, approached her bed. How do you feel? The nurse inquired, her tone soothing. Jessica's mouth felt dry, and words seemed to evade her for a moment. A bit dazed, I guess? She finally managed her voice faint. You're in the ICU for now, just so the doctors can monitor your recovery, the nurse said, offering a comforting smile. But the good news is, the procedure went off without a hitch. We don't anticipate any complications. Kevin's heart was lighter knowing the transplant had gone well. While the road ahead was long, with Sophia requiring close medical supervision, there was a renewed hope in his heart. The next day, as morning sunlight streamed into the hospital corridors, Jessica was transferred from the ICU to a regular room where she would recover for the next week. Kevin spent the morning at Sophia's side, chatting, consoling, and ensuring she had everything she needed. As he stepped into the hallway for a moment of respite, he took a deep, steadying breath and decided to update Jessica on the recent developments. Unaware that she was the donor, he believed she would be thrilled to hear that they had found a donor and successfully completed the transplant. Kevin paused, taking a moment to gather himself as he slowly wandered down the hospital hallway, still trying to process what had just happened. He was on his way to update Jessica about Sophia when a nurse briskly walked by, clutching a set of clothes and a ringing cell phone. Kevin's eyes darted to the phone case. It was unmistakably Jessica's. He watched the nurse intently as she made her way to a room further down. As the realization washed over him, Kevin's steps quickened. Before he could enter the room, however, he was intercepted by a doctor. "Sir, you can't go in there," the doctor stated firmly. "That phone, it's Jessica's. What happened to her?" Kevin's voice was filled with panic. The doctor tried to calm him down. "She's okay. She was here as a bone marrow donor." A weight seemed to lift off Kevin's chest, replaced by astonishment. Jessica had been their saving grace and chose to keep it a secret. 2 weeks later, Sophia was back home, surrounded by the love and care of her father. The house echoed with her laughter once again. One evening, as they sat on the porch, Kevin wrapped her in a warm embrace, assuring her that the worst was over. Sophia looked up, her eyes glistening with tears. "Dad, I'm so sorry for the hurtful things I said. You've been amazing throughout all of this." Kevin gently held her face and said, "It's okay, sweetheart, but there's something you need to know." Seeing the solemnity in his eyes, Sophia braced herself. "Do you remember when we got the news about the donor?" Kevin began. Sophia nodded slowly. "That donor didn't just come out of the blue. It was Jessica. She came forward to save you." Kevin's voice quivered with emotion. Sophia's eyes widened in shock, her previous feelings of animosity replaced by deep gratitude. "She did that for me?" Kevin nodded, wiping away his tears. "She wanted it to remain a secret, but she needed to know. Jessica cares about us, especially you." In that moment, Sophia's heart overflowed with newfound appreciation for Jessica's selfless act. The realization forever changed the dynamics of their relationship. Sophia blinked back the tears, her emotions swirling. She remembered Jessica's infectious laughter, her bright hazel eyes that always held warmth. She had often found herself irritated by Jessica's unwavering kindness, mistaking it for insincerity. Yet now, realizing the depth of Jessica's genuine care, Sophia felt a pang of guilt and gratitude. "Dad," she whispered, looking up at Kevin, "can we go see her? I need to apologize." Kevin nodded, understanding the importance of this moment. "Of course, sweetheart. Let's go." They made their way to the hospital the next day, armed with a beautiful bouquet of daisies, Sophia's idea to symbolize new beginnings. Entering Jessica's room, they found her reclined on the bed, reading a magazine. She looked up and smiled, but the surprise was evident in her eyes. Sophia approached slowly, clutching the bouquet tightly. "Mama Jessica?" she began hesitantly, her voice wavering. "I'm so sorry. I was wrong about you. I promised to be better." Jessica gently touched Sophia's cheek, wiping away a tear. "It's okay, sweetheart. We all make mistakes. The important thing is to learn from them." Sophia took a deep breath, her voice firmer now. "I have another wish. I hope you and Dad can have another baby. I'd love to have a little sibling to care for." Jessica's laughter filled the room, lightening the mood. "Let's focus on getting you better first," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Then we'll see about making your wish come true." Sophia's transition to homeschooling had its challenges, but with Jessica's unwavering support and patience, they developed a comfortable rhythm. The virtual lessons were convenient and flexible, but Sophia yearned for the lively chatter and the camaraderie of her classmates. Still, she knew that her health came first, and she made the best of the situation. Over time, her resilience and adaptability paid off. When the day came for her to return to traditional school, she was both excited and a little nervous. Throughout Sophia's recovery journey, Jessica remained her pillar of strength, attending to her needs and ensuring she received the best medical care. Every doctor's visit brought them more hope and confidence as Sophia continued to show signs of robust health. The joy of welcoming baby Sonia was immense. Her tiny cries, infectious giggles, and heartwarming coos added a new layer of happiness to their lives. Sophia, ever the caring sister, often took the lead, assisting Jessica with feeding and bathing routines. Their shared moments, from reading bedtime stories to singing lullabies, only strengthened the bond between them. One day, while Jessica was busy with Sonia, she couldn't help but eavesdrop on Sophia's animated phone conversation. When she recognized the topic of discussion and heard Sophia's heartfelt defense, emotions welled up inside her. The realization that Sophia considered her not just a mother figure, but her real mother, was overwhelmingly touching. Wiping away a tear, Jessica felt a warmth envelop her. Holding Sonia close, she whispered, "We are a family, complete and unbreakable." The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, casting a golden glow on everything it touched. Jessica drove to the cemetery with a bouquet of fresh wildflowers, Ellie's favorite. Walking slowly, she approached Ellie's resting place. The headstone was simple, engraved with her name and the words, "Loving wife and mother, forever in our hearts." Gently placing the flowers on the grave, Jessica sat down on the soft grass. Taking a deep breath, she said, You left behind a beautiful family, and I want you to know that they are safe, loved, and happy. Sophia is turning into such a wonderful, strong young woman, and she has your spirit. She has your resilience and grace. We welcomed little Sonia into our family. She's brought so much joy to all of us." A gentle breeze blew, rustling the leaves and making the flowers sway, as if the world around Jessica was responding to her heartfelt words. Tears welled in her eyes, a mix of sadness, gratitude, and resolve. "Thank you, Ellie," Jessica whispered, her voice choked with emotion, "for bringing us all together. I promise to honor your memory every day by taking care of the family you so dearly loved." As Jessica stood up, she felt the warmth enveloping her, as if she wasn't alone, as if Ellie was right there with her, silently acknowledging and comforting her. With one last glance at the grave, Jessica walked away, her heart filled with a sense of peace and determination.
I still remember the day when everything started to unravel. Life in the countryside suited my family perfectly, but for some reason, my in-laws seemed to think of our home as an open invitation. This wasn't a hotel after all, but our space, our home. My husband, Jim, had never been a demanding person before. However, when his mother came to stay, he grew bold, even downright unreasonable. "No need to bring in people who look like they can't handle their own finances," he'd mutter whenever my father visited. Jim's sneer would only get worse. "If you don't like it, you can leave." I'd stay silent, pity filling me more than anger, as his words cut through the air. My father may have been between jobs, but he was far from destitute, and seeing Jim, eager to impress his mother at any cost, filled me with disgust. I decided to leave. "Fine, I'll go. But you'll have to handle everything that comes after," I replied, watching as they joyfully saw me off, thinking they'd won. My name is Anna. I'm 33 and run a real estate company, a business my father started years ago and handed over to me only recently. Although I'm the company president, I still feel new to it, as my father stepped down just 2 years ago. His retirement came as a shock. He'd been planning to work for years, but he was adamant about wanting to focus on family, saying he regretted missing out all those years. His wife, my mother, had moved back to her hometown a few years prior to help care for my grandmother. My father decided it was time for him to join her and finally put his family first. While I respected his decision, I also felt the pressure of taking on the company, wondering if I was too young for such a role. I pleaded for him to reconsider, but he was firm. "The employees trust you. You'll rise to the challenge," he assured me. So, I accepted, grateful for his confidence and ready to take on the responsibility. Around this time, I married Jim, whom I'd met through work. My father admired him, calling him capable and sincere. But my mother had her doubts, especially when she learned about Jim's close relationship with his mother, who had raised him alone after his parents' divorce. She warned me that I might end up sharing my life with her too. Although I wasn't thrilled by the idea, I was prepared to live with her if it came to that. Thankfully, Jim told me that his mother enjoyed her freedom and had a new partner, which eased my mind. After our marriage, we moved into my apartment, but after my father moved to my mother's hometown, we had the option to move into my parents' old luxury apartment. Jim was thrilled at the idea. "It's so much bigger, and we'll need the space when we have kids," he reasoned. I agreed, especially since the apartment was owned by my company, making the move seamless. Settling into the spacious apartment, I could see Jim was more than pleased. "I'm so lucky I married you," he'd say, gazing at the view. He seemed to think that I had purchased it from my father. "How much did you buy this for?" he'd ask, even suggesting that maybe my father had gifted it to us. I decided to let him believe this, hoping he'd take on some financial responsibility. Yet, he didn't contribute at all, assuming I'd cover everything since I was now the president of a successful company. One evening, my father called, asking if we were enjoying the apartment. "Does Jim appreciate it?" he teased, hinting that he'd told Jim a story about the apartment's expense. I realized then why Jim thought I'd depleted my savings to buy it. Yet, despite this impression, Jim didn't lift a finger to help with expenses, and even acted as if he owned the place. He'd bragged to people about our luxury apartment, but I couldn't bring myself to tell him we were renting it from my company. After we moved, his mother started visiting often. She loved the view, and Jim, in a moment of excitement, suggested she move in. "Your house is getting old. You'd love it here," he'd said, ignoring my shocked expression. His mother hesitated, saying, "Anna might not like that." But Jim brushed her concerns aside. I was troubled by his sudden enthusiasm for living with his mother, especially since we'd agreed that space was important in close relationships. When I voiced my concerns, he snapped, "This is my house. There's no problem if my mother lives here." The more he spoke, the more I realized he truly thought he owned this place. He hadn't reviewed the rental agreement, which I had signed under his name, and he had no idea that the apartment wasn't ours. Deciding not to correct him, I simply stated that his mother's new partner couldn't move in with us. Jim grew defensive and evasive, avoiding my questions. Our arguments increased, especially since he wouldn't help with household expenses. Distressed, I reached out to my father for advice. My father sensed my concern. "I thought you'd live together eventually, but this seems rushed. If it's necessary, I'll come to help sort things out." Around this time, my grandmother's health suddenly deteriorated, and she passed away soon after. I tried reaching Jim, but he was unresponsive and only returned my call much later, cheerful and indifferent. When he didn't attend her funeral, my parents were disappointed, and his absence left me feeling alone. After the service, I returned home to find that his mother had already moved in. "I've moved everything. Looks like I'll be staying here now," she said, beaming. Jim's reaction stunned me even more. "Your grandmother's passing was perfectly timed," he sneered. "Now Mom can live here without interruptions." His disrespect for my family was infuriating, and I had no choice but to accept that his mother was now living with us. She quickly took control, demanding I handle all household chores as if I were her servant. Whenever I'd confront Jim, he'd insist that I should be grateful to have such a supportive mother-in-law. I couldn't take it. His mother even began inviting her boyfriend, who was close to Jim's age, over to our apartment. I felt both anger and disbelief seeing a man my husband's age lounging in my home, demanding I cook for him. "Is she being deceived?" I asked Jim, but he dismissed my concerns. Yet I could tell he was uncomfortable, doubting the man's intentions. Things came to a head when my mother called, wanting to visit for a few days to honor relatives who helped with my grandmother's funeral. I had to break the news to her about Jim's mother moving in, which shocked her. "We need to address this," she said, urging my father to come along. When I told Jim of their visit, he was furious and lashed out, his mother joining in to defend him. I could feel our home becoming more of a battleground than a sanctuary. With nowhere else to turn, I moved out, taking only my essentials and settling into an empty property owned by my company. When I told my parents, my mother was outraged. "Why did you have to leave? This apartment should be yours," she insisted, unaware that the apartment was a rental. My father explained it, revealing that Jim had misunderstood our living situation from the beginning. I decided it was time to set things straight with Jim. Returning to the apartment, I showed him the rental contract. He was stunned, realizing he'd been living under a false assumption all along. His mother reacted furiously, refusing to leave. "I sold my house for this," she cried, revealing that she'd been financially supporting her boyfriend, who had now vanished, taking her money with him. It was clear that Jim and his mother had no way of affording the rent, which was substantial. Faced with this reality, I presented divorce papers to Jim, unwilling to stay in a marriage filled with lies and disrespect. Despite his reluctance, my father insisted, saying, "I thought you were a better man, but I was wrong." With my family's support, I felt lighter, finally able to step away from the chaos. As Jim and his mother left the apartment, moving into a deteriorated house, I heard that his mother's boyfriend had been arrested, though all the money she'd given him was gone. The debt they now faced was enormous, a grim consequence of their choices. Jim tried contacting me multiple times, attempting to reconcile, but I refused. I couldn't forgive the way he'd treated my family and me, and I was determined to move forward. Threatening to report him for harassment, I made it clear that he was no longer welcome in my life. Returning to live with my parents, I found a renewed sense of purpose. The painful experiences had not only strengthened my resolve, but also reminded me of the value of my family's unwavering support. Each day now is a new beginning, filled with gratitude and motivation to build a future grounded in respect and integrity.